I just found out my husband of many, many years is cheating on me with an 18-year-old. And you want to know the worst part? It's not about him lying to sneak away to see her. It's not about him smelling like her perfume. It's about my mom. She knew about it the whole time and she encouraged it. And when I told her I was going to leave him, she told me it would be the biggest mistake of my life and, well, I'll tell you why. If your mom ever tells you stay married no matter what, even after catching your husband with a girl who still does homework, then you might want to pause and double check if she's really your mom. I used to think betrayal was catching your man red-handed in the act of cheating. Turns out real betrayal is your mom forging your signature on a prenup, then siding with the guy who calls his underage mistress Peaches. So here's a not-so-little rant on the need for lie detectors, specifically crafted for men. And maybe women too, since it's clear to me now that neither of them can be trusted, and how I went from a supportive housewife to a hellraiser. Well, my name is Vanessa. I married Damien fresh out of college, and he was older, established, charming, rich, and for the first few years our life was bliss. It was the kind of marriage you see on the gram and gush about couple goals and crap like that. Well, I'm telling you now, it's all fake. All of it. I mean, every single bit. Damien and I hosted dinner parties, we took vacations, he always had champagne chilled and reservations booked at some fancy restaurant whenever I got promoted at work. I thought I'd won, but somewhere along the line things shifted. First it was the late nights, the office, then out of nowhere, he starts showering twice before leaving for work. Then came the emergency weekend conference out of town. At some point he came home from work right in time for dinner, but then he would take a blanket and sleep in his vehicle for the whole night, saying it's just so that he could take private calls without disturbing me. I was really close to brushing it off, carrying on with my wife's duties, but that's when I noticed the perfume. It definitely wasn't mine, it didn't even smell like anything I owned. The scent was sugary, cheap like something you'd find in a teenage girl's purse, and it clung to his shirt. Always just faintly enough to deny, but loud enough to drive me crazy. I took it all in, not saying anything for weeks, and I read somewhere that men cheat more when they feel nagged. So I went quiet, acted cool, smiling through the rot, just so I could distract myself. I prepared more homemade meals, complimented him, knotted his tie for work, and even shaved his neck for him one morning. I wasn't stupid, though. I went full Nancy Drew. Installed a hidden dash cam in his car, got an old iPhone synced to his Apple ID, and left it in the briefcase to track him. I even waited outside his office one night, wine bottle in hand, hoping to see something, anything, but I got nothing. Either Damien was actually clean, or he was darn good at covering his tracks. No suspicious messages, clean phone, gallery, and socials. His work colleagues literally sang his praises whenever I did a bit of snooping around behind his back. I almost convinced myself I was paranoid and needed to start seeing a shrink. I had a bit of luck, though. One Friday evening, when I was all by myself at a bar, I just left my therapist's office and stopped by to kill time. Plus, I knew that I literally had no husband to go home to. So, I sat at the far end, scrolling through photos from our wedding like a clown, when I looked up and saw him with a girl who looked like she was barely old enough to drive. She was hot, though, and blonde, and I did a mental once-over of myself and realized that she was everything I wasn't when it came to looks. At least I had better taste in perfume than she, I thought. As for the man I thought I was married to, that jerk was leaning in close, laughing, feeding her French fries, wearing the darn watch I gave him for our anniversary, and I sent him a quick text asking him where he was and if he wanted me to bring dinner to the office. His reply came instantly. "Oh, still in meetings, honey. Oh, might be a late one." I didn't even flinch, just stood up, walked over to their table, and poured the full contents of my margarita on his head. Then I walked out without another word. When I got home, I called the only person who ever gave it to me straight, my mother Irene. She listened quietly as I poured everything out, from the perfume to the sketchy attitude to the bar incident. I told her I was done and that I was leaving, and immediately her tone shifted. I couldn't recognize her voice anymore because in her words, I, quote, "dare not leave that man." I laughed thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. She went ahead to tell me a bunch of ridiculous stuff, like how he was the only reason our business was still afloat, how he bailed out my father's estate when I was still in college. She even said everything I thought I owned was his. At this point, I was shaking with anger. I told her it was fine and that I would just take what was mine and leave. The reply I got next from the woman I called mother was cold as ice. "You have nothing, Nessa." Then she hung up. I thought she was bluffing until I called the bank the next morning and found out that every account had Damien's name as a primary holder. Even the business I co-founded was tied to a shell company that looped back to its firm. When I reached out to the lawyer who handled my condo deed, he told me it was legally under Damien's name, and before I could ask how that's possible, he hung up. And from there on, it got even worse. The lawyer I asked to speed up the whole divorce thing called the next day and asked me if I was sure I wanted this. When I asked what he meant, he told me he found a prenuptial signed by me, and what the odds were not exactly in my favor. At this point, it became clear to me that something wasn't right. Before I never signed a prenup, I could not even imagine myself thinking of one when I said yes to Damien, considering how much I'm in love I thought we were. There was only one other person I could hold this against. I confronted Irene again, and she didn't even try to deny it. She had the effort to tell me that I had always been emotional, that she knew I would make a dumb choice like the one that I was about to make, and that was why she signed it for me. For my own good, she said. So, here's where we're at now. My husband is a two-faced cheat, and my own mother betrayed me, and in all of this, Damien remained completely indifferent. He even brought the girl home the other day and said that she was his intern. And the little woman didn't even pretend to act coy. She just walked around in a crop top and fake lashes like she was some kind of reality star. I plastered a smile on my face whenever she was around, so I'd seem unaffected, secretly hoping that she would turn into an old woman or something overnight, and I'd finally have my hubby back. Exactly 1 month later, I get forwarded an email with her ID and a photo of a club flyer I'd seen once in Damien's briefcase. There was also a warning note at the end of the mail telling me to be careful around Irene. You know, I was willing to take my chances, so I went to the club that night and parked outside the curb. Close enough to see who came in and went out, and far enough so it's not obvious. Damien drove to a sleek window-tinted building that looked like a nightclub for rich people. He kissed Belinda at the door and walked in. 5 minutes later, another car pulls up, and you won't believe who steps out. My mother! Wearing a fur coat and black shades. She scanned the surroundings and walked into the same building like she owned it. Everything suddenly made sense. She did own the place. This wasn't just a matter of infidelity. This was organized, and somehow I was at the center of it. This is the craziest thing I've ever discovered, and the worst part is, I don't know what to do with this piece of information. Run and hide or stay and fight. Your advice and opinions would mean a lot to me, guys, as long as you're not being unnecessarily mean while at it. Update number 1. Well, it's been a while. I haven't updated you in an entire year since I found out about Damien and Irene. I wish I could say things have calmed down, but it got worse, way worse. They don't even try to hide anything anymore. It's like they're daring me to react. Damien started bringing other women home like I wasn't even there. Sometimes he would not bother to introduce them or pretend it was business. They all looked the same, sparsely dressed and underage. Irene herself would pop in randomly with them like she was hosting some kind of social club in my own home. I stopped eating properly. I barely left the house, and I would lock myself in the bathroom and just sit on the floor. You know, I was wondering how my life turned into this. I started therapy too, and I wish I could say it helped. Everything took a different turn one night when Damien said he was going out for drinks with the buddies. The same tired lie, going out with the guys. I waited 5 minutes, grabbed my coat and my keys, and followed him. I had no plan really, I just needed to see. Also, I couldn't take any of it for much longer. The girls, the way he came home smelling like perfume I didn't own, sweat, and something dark. He pulled over at a club and I did the same. This one looked different but gave off the same creepy vibe as the first one. I followed him too, and red neon lights, blacked out windows. I waited until he went inside, and then walked past like I was just strolling. Through the glass, I could see just enough. Girls, lots of them young, barely legal looking, barely clothed, not dancing like they wanted to be there, but dancing like they had to. Something about the way they were being moved around, the way men were watching them, did not sit right. I knew that I'd seen enough when I caught a glimpse of some heavily built men holding one of the girls down so they could force something down her throat. I left before she saw me or before anything else happened. I threw up in a public bathroom and sat in the stall until my legs worked again. Everything clicked and unclicked all at once. I didn't sleep that night. Spent the next days digging. I searched property records, online club reviews, business registration, anything I could find, until Irene's names showed up. She owned the club, or at least she's the face behind whatever really goes on there and whoever owns it. There was only one word that came to my mind. Well, traffic. 2 days later, I get a text from a number I didn't recognize. No name, just coordinates and a message that said, "You want the truth about Irene? Come alone." I don't know why I went, but I did. Alone, of course. I parked my car in front of a cafe and took a cab to get to the location since the anonymous texter mentioned something about being tracked. And guess who I found there? Belinda. The girl I'd seen with Damien, the one I'm sure he was doing stuff with behind my back, and things, I don't know. This must have been another Irene-labeled ploy. I turned to walk away, but then she tells me that we were sisters and that our parents would hate to see us this way. Before I knew what I was doing, my hands were on her throat, threatening her and telling her that if she ever referred to us as anything related by blood again, I would do something I won't regret. But she didn't even flinch. Just looked me dead in the eyes and told me to quit playing the victim and hear her out. Guys, after what seemed like an eternity, I let go of her, and she starts talking, said that Irene took her when she was younger as a payment for a debt her family owed. Told her parents it was temporary, but a few years later her parents passed away in a suspicious house fire that she managed to escape from. And the worst part, according to her, was when she sat outside watching and waiting as the medics pulled out the bodies of her parents, but told her they could not find her sister anywhere inside or around the house. Long story short, Belinda believed that I was her sister. She said that she's been looking for me and that she even went to the FBI, told them everything, and started working with them from the inside. Apparently, sleeping with Damien was part of the sting operation until Irene grew obsessed with her, saying she wanted to keep her close, so Belinda just played along. Until she saw me. I still didn't believe a darn word until she pulled out a DNA test. She'd already tested me somehow, and it was a match. Since then, I met with her in secret to pull all the info we gathered together. Right now, she's the one link I have to the FBI. She says that they're getting close, and I want to believe her. I mean, I kinda have to. Update number 2. Okay, same story and other updates. I'm sure you all thought the case was as good as settled just because I found a lifeline in the form of a long-lost sister. But I was wrong. All the way wrong. Less than a month after Belinda handled me that DNA test confirming we were sisters, I got another anonymous email. I noticed the IP address was from the same sender who sent me an email before to warn me about Irene. But this time there was no vague threats, just an attachment. According to whoever sent this, I've been lied to. Again, the attachment contained a DNA report from a clinic in a different state, one that did not match Belinda's version. Belinda and I were not related at all. She didn't even have a missing sister. The 1% match in this new report said it all. So the whole sob story was manufactured, scripted, and fed to me like some needy puppy, word for word. Belinda was planted to keep me emotionally compliant. Meaning, it was all targeted to keep me quiet, isolated, and too grateful to question anything. She was the handler dressed up as a lifeline, and I'd fallen for it. But this time around, I didn't throw a pity party for myself, I got to work. With a little help from a tech company, I was able to trace and make contact with the person behind these emails. Same person, by the way. They've been tracking Irene's operation for years and were one of the few people who had ever been close enough to see how deep it went. Were they with the FBI? No, but they had evidence and it was a crap ton. Names, timelines, recycled recruitment scripts, you name it, they had it. They knew exactly what Belinda was, what Irene really was, and now so did I. I took the evidence and went straight to the authorities. The cops were not even shocked. In fact, they admitted that they've known Irene's name and had gotten a few leads on her underground operations for a while. She'd been investigated multiple times, but nothing ever stuck. Too many fake names, too many clean ledgers, too many favors owed, and I'm pretty sure that she had a few of them on her payroll. They said if I had something solid, they would take it. So I told them to give me some time, and then I played dumb. I went back home that day and acted like I was a broken, scared, and desperate person trying to protect our family. I told Belinda all about my findings, the DNA test and all. Then I told her I needed her to cooperate with me so I could stage her arrest. It was either that or I would hand over her directly to the FBI. This was going to make Irene believe the FBI was onto her and make her trust me one last time for not ousting her. So basically, she thought that she had her daughter back on her side, and Irene completely bought the fake setup. And when I escorted Belinda to what she thought was a staged meetup, she found out it was the real thing. An FBI detective was already waiting when she walked into the interrogation room, and I watched the whole thing play out from another room. There was no drama, no beating around the bush, and I watched her face go from confused to embarrassed and then shocked, as the detective told her that Irene and Damien had already cut her out of the loop. The plan was to dump the blame on her and walk away clean. After the piece of revelation, boy did she crack open instantly. Belinda told them the whole truth this time, said she'd been under Irene's control since she was just 16 years of age, and she was actually 26 now. Everything about her identity and documents had been fabricated. Age, background, everything. Courtesy of Irene, of course. Then she was used as bait. Pushed into clubs, sent to befriend recruits to convince them that Irene's way was safe. She helped Irene cut deals with the other businessmen who ran similar organizations, and she was never looking out for me. She was just a tool, looking out for herself. With the way the girl was shaking on her seat, I nearly felt sorry for her, but I remembered where that got me the first time I did. Her confession gave the FBI everything they needed to piece together the puzzle, and to come up with the perfect clapback. So we moved fast. First, I set up an ego trap, a charity gala in Irene's honor. The guest list was packed with politicians, donors, media executives, nonprofits, literally anybody who had her publicly praising her, some who she probably had wrapped around her little thumb. She was delighted about it, thinking it was a victory lap, and she made me sit and watch her gush over magazines, asking what designer pieces to wear for the gala, what hairdo, and if I could make room for more dignitaries. Trust me, it was exhausting and a bit nauseating, especially when I thought all of the young girls she pawned this money she spent so extravagantly off of. But it was all worth it in the end. Because what Irene did not know was that I had already handed the feds every piece of info Belinda gave up. They had some verified, cross-referenced, and traced back to the same charitable programs Irene had been running for years. The plan was to detonate it all at the gala. Okay, let's just fast forward to D-Day, shall we? Because oh wow. Irene was totally in her element, draped in silver, dripping with power, commanding the room like she was royalty. I could see that she enjoyed the attention, she always did. I made sure the gala was being broadcast in real time to donors across the country. Her voice rang out confidently as she launched into her third speech of the day, talking about empowerment, uplifting survivors, and building a legacy for vulnerable women. She went on and on about how many girls she helped, how many of them that she would pull back from the edge. The crowd, full of polished smiles and clinking champagne glasses, lapped it up until the projector behind her flickered. The screen behind her went black. Under normal circumstances, it would have been mistaken for a glitch, but I'd already briefed the tech guys working backstage, and the FBI was positioned strategically around the building. Then the projector lit up. The clear high-res video footage began to roll, the audio cutting through the room like a blade. It showed Irene and Damien seated behind a desk in a dimly lit office with stacks of papers, very off-brand for their precious little public image. Well, they were handing out thick manila folders to visibly distressed parents. Money, obviously. So Damien leaned in and whispered to one of them, saying it was just a formality, that it would guarantee a better life for them and their daughter. The footage jumped to another angle, and this time showing Irene talking to some bulky-looking guy outside her club about program placements and removing complications in case any of the girls forgot what they agreed to. The energy in the room shifted, and all the polite members at the gala, with their little laughter, turned to dead silence. Someone gasped audibly. Others simply stared at the screen, horror etched on their faces, and I'm pretty sure they were all wondering how close they stood to a monster. Then, just like clockwork, the FBI swarmed in. Agents left and right, flanking the stage, every direction. Damien was the first to panic. He bolted towards the back exit, nearly knocking over a poor server. Made it 10 feet before being tackled and pinned to the ground by 2 agents in tactical gear. Well, Irene's charities were immediately placed under federal audit, and within days it became clear that the nonprofits were elaborate laundering fronts that used to clean money sourced from illegal adoptions, blackmail, and private deals with some big shots. Damien's accounts were frozen and his properties were seized. In the end, he walked out of the courtroom with a frozen bank account and a lifetime restraining order to remind him of what he lost. Despite Irene's so-called influence, she wasn't even granted bail. She and Damien were both sentenced to 20 years in jail, and as for me, I have no husband and no mother, but at least there's no more lies. I burnt their entire legacy to the ground.